saying that graduate students, even with a year of eligibility, can't play. So John Tillman, who was then the coach at Harvard, now the coach at Maryland, is one of the coaches who helped get Vince Smith to Johns Hopkins. We talked to him last week before that matchup, and he just raved about what a great young man Vince Smith is. He has his second goal with the long pole for Johns Hopkins this year.
Carter, one of the things that you know, for the viewers out there that don't know, when there is a face-off violation, the face-off man, before the whistle is blown, now this is a before the whistle violation, the face-off man who offends must leave the field, which automatically gives a break, a numbers up situation for the offensive team. So that was how Hopkins sort of arranged that little set play last time around.
So then as a face-off unit, do you have automatic plays that you go to when the opponent commits the violation before the whistle, or is that just something that transpires in the moment?
You know, you will practice plays, but you know, you must be a team that wins a lot of face-offs if you're going to practice plays like that. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting your time.
And Johns Hopkins is, and it's 3-0 Johns Hopkins in the face-off X. As we mentioned right off the start, one of the big concerns for Navy, just possession on the face-off. And it's immediately turned into 2 goals in the first minute for Johns Hopkins. This is the first time that Navy has a chance to bring it down to the offensive end. Successful clear by Brian Striffler, short stick defensive middie. And finally, the midshipmen get to set up on the offensive end.
Well, it's a good thing they got stopped the bleeding there a little bit. They're in danger right now, I would say, of getting blown out if they don't get themselves going. I mean, a 2-0 jump in the first minute and a half of the game is real tough. So let's see how they expect Navy to run a motion offense, a high tempo, lots of ball movement.
This is Andy Warner to Nick Davis out there with Jay Mann, the first midfield unit for the midshipmen. Andy Warner, the senior who had the game winner versus Johns Hopkins last year in overtime. Jamie, you talked about how last year Johns Hopkins was such a young team, struggling to 500 in the regular season, still made the NCAA tournament, but Navy was able to snap that 36-game losing streak against a younger Johns Hopkins team. This year, it's Navy who is the young team.
There's different levels of struggling when you talk about different programs. When Hopkins struggles, they're barely 500 and they make the playoffs still. When Navy struggles, you know, they don't make their own conference tournaments, and that's just a level of the hierarchy of recruiting.
4 straight losses for the midshipmen, 4-8 right now, and this is the season finale for Navy. An early season finale, Patriot League tournament next weekend, a weekend earlier than most. Johns Hopkins trying the playoffs in May. Jay Mann taken to the ground. There is a stall warning, so Mann has to stay inside the box. Mann with a feed out front. It's taken away by Leitner, and a good defensive stand by Johns Hopkins.
Great ride back by Navy. A quick whistle. They might be able to get something right here.
Quick restart for the midshipmen. The feed in front. Davis leaves it high as he takes a shot as soon as he releases it from Marshall Burkhart. The two-way midi back on defense.
Navy's going to go back to their up-tempo motion.
Doyle and Burkhart get tangled up. It's a loose ball push against Johns Hopkins, so Navy possession again. Oh, good feed out front for Davis, who gets hit as soon as he catches it.
High feed, though. High feed. Didn't give the receiver a chance to handle that thing, but it was a good look.
Jamie, just a moment ago, you said if Navy didn't get some kind of momentum, in danger of a blowout. Here's Johns Hopkins in transition again, but what do you think of the level of play from the midshipmen as a response in the last couple of minutes?
Well, they really blew the first play of the game when they didn't switch that pick or get through it the right way. They weren't prepared. Hopkins always comes out with a set play on their very first play. Sometimes it's a little give and go look with Guida that they did early in the season, and this time it was a little pass down, pick down. But they blew that one. The coverage on the second goal wasn't terrible, but they were surprised by it. So they're going to need a good defensive stand right here.
Hopkins' first midfield unit again with Rannigan, Greeley, and Guida. Joining the attack line of Chris Bolin, Kyle Wharton, and Zach Palmer. Dodge from Rannigan, and he misses as we look at Jamie's keys for the game.
Well, for Navy, it was put it all together.
On the quick restart, there's a flag, no goal.
Oh, they're going to blow this a goal. No? Usually when the flag goes down, it's almost an automatic goal. It means that there was a flag and a push and they call it a goal, but he must have been in the crease prior to. So back to the keys. Navy, put it all together. You know, one game Wickham has 20 saves. The next game they're scoring double digits. The next game they're holding somebody down, but they haven't been able to put it all together. Let's look at this push again. So that was a push. He must have touched his feet right here. You can't see. If he hadn't touched his feet, it would have counted. The flag goes down, and it would have counted.
So the foul is on Peter Rogers. 32nd man-up opportunity for Johns Hopkins. Defensively, Navy has been really good. Man-down defensive unit on the year. But a great fake results in the goal for Zach Palmer. How about the fake and the dodge to give Hopkins a 3-0 start?
Well, the keys for Hopkins I was talking about was offensive efficiency, and they are being very efficient here. On their first man-up play, they have a beautiful little seal and slip, and what that means is their lefty wing shooter is going to seal his man in and slip to the net. And as that happens, the defender goes with the popping man, giving a beautiful opportunity for the Canadian Zach Palmer for the easy little dip and dunk inside. That was a nice play, though. It was a really well orchestrated little look. You see a lot of seal and slips out of that set, but you usually see it from behind.
That's our Sector Spiders player portfolio on Zach Palmer, the sophomore from Ontario who has exploded in his sophomore season and had a terrific behind-the-back goal last week in the overtime win versus Maryland.
To a certain degree, I think his teammates were just getting used to playing with him early in this season because the feeds he was throwing backhand feeds and behind-the-back feeds. His teammates were not ready for them. I mean, literally, they were going by their sticks, and they could have been big goals for the Blue Jays, particularly in the Princeton game, and Palmer is a very creative feeder.
Offsides technical foul is the call against Navy. There was some confusion in the substitution off of that faceoff. So Johns Hopkins is going to go on the extra man again. Just moments after the Blue Jays get an extra man goal, the extra man unit back out there. However, Hopkins turns it over right into the stick of Pat Kiernan, the freshman long stick midi.
Well, there's no doubt that Navy is young, and they've been playing young. That was a big pickoff right there to be able to stop this momentum. They really need to get on the board here. If they do, they can keep this a game, but if they're going to let this thing get up beyond 5 or 6 goals in a row, it's going to be a major uphill battle.
Well, Johns Hopkins, characteristically an excellent defensive team. This year, 3rd in the nation, allowing just under 7 goals a game.
Last week, Maryland jumped on Hopkins 7-2, but the difference is Hopkins got major firepower, and Navy has to chip away at you and play a steady game all game long in order to get a W, whereas Hopkins, I think, is a little more explosive.
There's Taylor Reynolds on the dodge behind the cage. The only upperclassman on the attack line for Navy. Reynolds is a junior, joined by the freshman Sam Jones and the freshman Tucker Hull. Both of those freshmen have been really good for Navy this year, but they are freshmen. Reynolds, the junior from Babylon, New York, with a dodge back out to Nick Davis. Low shot, that's off the side of the cage.
Hopkins has pushed the ball in transition more this year than they probably have in the entire history of Dave Petramala's coaching tenure. They're putting pressure on the net in transition. Their pulls, as you can see, we got a pull all the way down there on the crease right now, hanging out, waiting to see if there's opportunities for him. We have a flag down now, and there's going to be a free play for the Hopkins Blue Jays right now. Let's see what they do.
So again, until the ball touches the ground, it's 6-on-6. Then the penalty will be assessed, and now another penalty coming up on Navy. And we could have a two-man advantage coming up here for Johns Hopkins. So the first one is Andy Warner with a 1-minute slash, and then there's a 30-second penalty on Peter Rogers. So it's going to be a two-man advantage for Johns Hopkins.
I'll tell you right now, Warner is chippy. Every coach talks about the fact that that kid is absolutely chippy. And you see here the way that the Canadian and Palmer draws the foul by driving hard into the bigger man and drawing the hold.
So 6-on-4 right now for Johns Hopkins on the extra man. Goodrich gets the shot and appeared to go off the stick of Wickham.
Hopkins has looks here, Carter. There are looks everywhere.
6-on-4 Lacrosse, and Greeley pumps home the fourth Johns Hopkins goal, the second extra man goal for the Blue Jays, and it is a big 4-0 start for Johns Hopkins. Leading to a Navy timeout. Blue Jays say, all right, overtime win for you last year, Navy. It's 2011. Johns Hopkins Lacrosse is back. There's a number 2 next to our name. And now 4 goals on the board for Dave Petramala's Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Dominant start through almost the first 9 minutes of play.
Beautiful backside look for the right-handed step-in rip. I mean, honestly, they've got looks everywhere I look. They've got looks. I was saying that right before we scored. But Carter, if Navy doesn't get it together, it's going to be, I mean, the face of Richie Meade at the end there pretty much said it all. Guys, come on now, we got to compete.
Navy timeout. Hopkins off to a dominant 4-0 start at Homewood. Well, Johns Hopkins Lacrosse has, of course, a very proud history, the Hall of Fame here just off of Homewood Field. And coming up next, it's the Cordish Center, the $10 million project breaking ground officially tonight. This is going to be, as Dave Petramala says, standing at the top of the mountain and saying lacrosse is part of our fabric. We are 100% committed to being the premier lacrosse program. And this will be the premier lacrosse facility by all accounts for men's and women's lacrosse here at Johns Hopkins.
It can do wonders for a program when you get facilities. I mean, Petro has recruited as well or better than anybody in Division I lacrosse since he came here about 10 years ago. But if you were to see their facilities the way they are now compared to what they're going to be, you'd be surprised. If there are high school programs that have some better facilities, not field-wise and stadium. Homewood's incredible, but locker room facilities and all that kind of stuff. It's just, it hasn't been nearly as good as what he's had to go up against. With the ACC and all these other programs, Syracuse now, they've got an absolute gem in a recruiting structure, offices, amazing.
And when you talk about another face-off win for Delente and Johns Hopkins, stick check from behind by Hirsch, but another possible scoring opportunity for the Blue Jays. We're talking to Dave Petramala about the Cordish Center. Typical coach fashion, he said what he was really looking forward to was the film room. And having a small film room where you could take first and second and third midfield units and go watch film, and then having the big film room where you take your entire team. I mean, that's spoken like a coach.
No doubt. Well, he also said the most important thing really is recruiting, and that's just a fact.
Make it 5-0 Johns Hopkins. John Rannigan, the sophomore midi, the top scoring midi for the Blue Jays, has his 14th goal of the season.
Big John Rannigan, when he gets running downhill, you're going to have to send somebody on a double team. Navy really doesn't, as Hopkins runs out of their double pick mumbo set. No slide. And all of a sudden, the movement left Navy occupied. No help, Ranning in, buries it.
Now, worst case scenario for Navy, Johns Hopkins dominating in the face-off circle, and that turning directly into goals for the Blue Jays. Yet another face-off win for Johns Hopkins, although a battle for the ground ball now. Won by the Blue Jays again. Kyle Wharton comes out of there with a ground ball.
We found out Kyle Wharton's a pretty good actor, didn't we, Garda?
Yes, indeed. In fact, I think, boy, Jamie, you weren't getting this television thing. That's what you call a tease. You've teased our television audience. Yeah, pretty impressive. We're gonna get some acting,
little flip cam action.
Yeah. My goodness, how long you been doing this now? Yeah.
Like third time.
This month. Carter Blackburn with Jamie Monroe led Denver Pioneers 4 league titles. Jamie's time at Denver. Talking about the Cordish Center, that $10 million facility that Johns Hopkins is building dedicated to men's and women's lacrosse. And you alluded to it, but you know, a lot of the other top-tier programs have football and other programs that they can partner with. Johns Hopkins Lacrosse, the signature program of Johns Hopkins Athletics. So it is a statement saying that, all right, we may not have the BCS conference football program, but we can put together a facility for our men's and women's lacrosse programs. Good feed by Palmer. The shot low from Goodrich. Wickham unable to corral it, and it turns into another Johns Hopkins goal. Boland has his second of the game. 6-0 start for the Blue Jays. And it is just worst case for the Navy midshipmen.
Well, Navy gets a stop, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, rebound, Navy standing around. This is so uncharacteristic of Navy to let a ball get picked up by anybody, and then end of the play, foul, insult to injury. Hopkins is going to be on the man up.
So again, the foul at the end, as Jamie pointed out, that's on Vernum. So another extra man opportunity and no face-off here. Possession goes to the Blue Jays. And it's an extra man opportunity. Already 2 extra man goals for Johns Hopkins, where Navy coming into tonight had allowed only 9 extra man goals. And that's where the penalty comes in, that little shove at the end.
Bowen wasn't afraid to let the refs know that he was having nothing to do with getting pushed around and drawing that penalty too.
Called a Lambier.
These guys are snapping the ball around though. I mean, watch how fast and how confidently they're moving the ball.
Palmer just misses on the doorstep, so Navy trying to control. Johns Hopkins riding, trying to get it back. Palmer riding hard on the goalie Wickham.
Palmer letting the goalie run right by him, though. You're up 6-0. You can't get too down on him right now, but if he would have kept his man in front of him, maybe you force Wickham to throw the ball away.
So Navy will try and stall and kill off the penalty and get back to even strength at 6-6. Johns Hopkins 4 straight wins coming into this game as the penalties released. 3 of those 4 wins over top 5 programs, North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland, meaning that Johns Hopkins goes 3-0 versus the ACC.
Not top 5 in my top 8.
That's yet again another tease from Jamie Monroe. We're going to be taking a look at your top 8 here in a little bit. Kevin Doyle's shot misses. Bassett offering help as Tim Donovan gets trapped back there. Navy once again riding hard. Marshall Burkhart clears it for Johns Hopkins. His younger brother Ian, the honorary captain tonight. Ian was paralyzed in an accident. And he is the honorary captain on the sideline as part of the pregame warm-ups tonight for Johns Hopkins.
I recruited Marshall Burkhart. He's from Columbus, Ohio, Upper Arlington High School, I think. Can't remember which high school, but Columbus, Ohio for sure. Great high school athlete. Tragedy what happened to his brother, but he's here. And hopefully in as good a spirits as you can be when your brother's up 6-0 in a big ball game.
Eric Rule now out there with a third midfield line for Johns Hopkins.
Another Ohio native. Rule is just a big beast, a freshman, and he's a guy that they feel like is the most athletic of the young middies.
There is Ian Burkhart, we mentioned, the younger brother of Marshall, who was the honorary captain tonight. Dave Petramalo is wearing the IB on the front of his jersey in 13. Again, that's in honor of Ian Burkhart, the younger brother of Marshall Burkhart. He's the honorary captain for tonight's game. Paralyzed in an accident.
I was talking to a Division I coach this week who will remain nameless, but he told me that Navy had struggled on handling picks on the ball all year. The first goal of the game, down pick to come around. That last one, there was a chance right there when Palmer was picked for and had an opportunity. So look for Hopkins to continue to set picks for the ball to see if they can get Navy to struggle a little bit.
Boland feeds out front, the shot low, and a good save from Wickham as Lee Coppersmith's shot was low. Wickham makes his first solid save of the night.
Coppersmith telegraphed that shot. Some people say, you know, you can never drop your head and shoot low. Well, the fact of the matter is, no matter what, you can't telegraph your shots. Coppersmith put his head down low, stick down low, told the goalie he was going low, shot it low, save. When you see better shooters like Wharton, he will change up the way his shot appears to the goalie, which makes a huge difference.
First quarter, all Johns Hopkins. 2 more goals for Boland, and it's 6-0 Blue Jays after 1. Next Saturday, April 30th at the Carrier Dome, 2 of the top teams in college lacrosse face-off. It's #1 Notre Dame against 4th-ranked Syracuse. Old Spice College Lacrosse on ESPNU Saturday, April 30th at 7 Eastern. Both of those teams, no problem today. Cuse over Rutgers 12-2, and Notre Dame with a blowout win over Providence. So 1 versus 4. Now, Syracuse versus Notre Dame is 2 top 4 teams. That's not that big of a surprise. The surprise is it's Notre Dame at #1 and Syracuse at #4. Jamie, what are you looking for in that matchup next week at the Carrier Dome?
Well, 2 great defensive teams. 2 teams that don't, you know, when you think of Syracuse, you think of goal scoring. And yet, Syracuse has struggled mightily to score goals this year. And frankly, Notre Dame is better defensively than Syracuse. This is probably going to be a low-scoring game. I mean, you never know, but I'm guessing it's going to be of a 7-6, 8-7 variety. And I think Notre Dame, I'd give them the edge, although, you know, it wouldn't surprise me who won the game, but I think Notre Dame just plays a little smarter, and their defense is a little better. Their goaltending's phenomenal. They really do, they're doing a great job. I worry more when Notre Dame faces somebody that can really score. Want to know the most unbelievable stat of the year?
Yes.
5-4 victory over Villanova when the Villanova goalie has like 3 saves. 4 saves.
I thought you were going to say 5-4 the double overtime win, Syracuse over Johns Hopkins. I mean,
well, that's amazing too. Back-to-back 5-4 games for Syracuse is unbelievable. You know, that's a great stat, but how about 5-4 victory, 4 saves for the Villanova goalie? You would think that that guy would have had to have 18 or 20 saves. They put 9 balls on the goal in a game.
And then Cornell with just a dominant win over Syracuse to drop the Orangemen from that #1 spot.
Ben DeLuca doing a phenomenal job taking over for what Jeff Tambroni started, or Dave Petromalis started before Jeff Tambroni. They've got the best player in the country, in my opinion, in Rob Pennell. And when they have every single year, they just get prepared, and they will just step on your throat. I've never seen a program that does that more often to more people. When they have you, they just crush you. It's amazing.
You mentioned Rob Pennell at Cornell. Is he clear favorite right now for the Tewaaraton?
Well, I think there's a lot of great players out there, in Crowley and Bitter and players, you know, all over. Stanwyck from Virginia. Rob Pennell is the best of the best, though. That guy cannot be stopped. He's the all-around player, dodger, feeder, shooter. Whole game goes through him, and he's putting up 5.5 points a game.
You know, how about Johns Hopkins? This is nearing the end of April. It's Easter weekend. Johns Hopkins has that #2 next to its name. You presume a top 4 seed locked up for this Blue Jay team. But Dave Petromalis says not only do we have to keep winning games, it's really not about winning games right now. They have the solid resume. It's about fine-tuning those things. He says, yeah, we're 8-2, but we've played the 1-goal games that have gone our way. It's about fine-tuning things with the younger team. I mean, one of 8 underclassmen in the starting lineup, that's still a young team. There's a lot to fine-tune before you're a championship contender, at least in Dave Petromalis' eyes.
Well, his whole point was we must keep getting better, and that's pretty much what every coach is going to tell you. We got to get better every day. We got to get better at everything. There's not one thing that they do well enough where they're like, all right, we're good on that. We're good on our man up. We're good on our offense. I mean, they've got 2 sophomores and a freshman on the first line. They've got to get better. Their attack has got to do more in terms of they're going to face a double pull situation in the midfield where a short stick gets bumped down to an attackman, a defenseman gets bumped up to the midfield. The attacker going to have to start making a statement in terms of being able to go at their guy one-on-one.
This is Rule behind the cage running with the second midfield. Rule's come back from injury to be productive the last couple of weeks, and he sets up Kyle Wharton on this trip down the field. Wharton with goal number 19 of his senior year. For a guy who really slumped at the beginning of the season, Kyle Wharton is beginning to turn it on. Game winner last week against Maryland in overtime, and gives Hopkins a 7-0 lead tonight against Navy.
A very skilled player. Watch how he steps in, winds up, has all the time in the world, comes straight over the top, overhand. Most players would think that Kyle Wharton is all low to high, and you'll see it out of him, particularly when he's on his natural side wing. But when he gets to that other side of the field, he hammers that thing home, high to low. The goalie really has no chance because that thing's coming out so fast, high to low. It's very tough to stop.
And as we talked about areas of improvement for Johns Hopkins as the Blue Jays make it 8-0 in the faceoff circle tonight against Navy. Dave Petromalis says flat out, Kyle Wharton is our senior captain. We've got to have consistent goal production out of him for the rest of the season if we're going to be a championship contender. Rannigan puts the dodge on, but the shot deflected.
Well, and I think what he really meant was more playmaking. Wharton's going to finish, okay? But that's up to somebody else making the plays and him finishing them. So they need him to be a little bit more of a playmaker, a little bit more of a dodger, dodge and dump, dodge and feed, dodge and get your own shots off if they're going to have their best chance to have a lot of success and get themselves to Memorial Day weekend.
Which would be right down the street, M&T Bank Stadium here in Baltimore, home of the Ravens. Which will be on ESPN. ESPN family of networks brings you selection show through the NCAA tournament all the way through the Final Four championship game on Memorial Day at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore. J-man shot deflected, backed up by Navy. just the 4th shot by the midshipmen in this game, because the faceoffs are 8-0 in favor of Johns Hopkins. Kevin Doyle, the senior attackman, trying to dodge on Rannigan at the top. Rannigan out there playing defense. Two-way midi look for the talented sophomore from Yorktown, New York. Doyle can't corral the pass, and now the ground ball loose. Scooped by Phil Castronova, the freshman from Bel Air, Maryland. Short stick D midi, who now leads the break. Rannigan takes the bump, loses it off the rebound. Wickham got a stick on it.
Here's the transition we were talking about. But prior to that, Hopkins playing typical Dave Petramala Hopkins defense. Slide, recover, do it again.
Now can Navy take advantage in transition? Just the 5th shot, but it's wide by Marty Gallagher.
That's the shot you're going to get. The 11, 12-yard shot with a guy coming right out at you is most of the time what you're going to get, unless Hopkins makes a mistake. But so far, they've been doing a really good job of being on time with their double teaming and very, very quickly recovering. You can recover within 2 seconds, Carter. If you are good and well instructed as to where to recover to, within 2 seconds, you can be balanced up. That's tough for an offense.
Hopkins defense giving no breathing room for the midshipman offense to work. Durkin with a feed inside for Davis, but a stick as soon as Davis gets a shot off from the very talented freshman Jack Riley, close defenseman for Johns Hopkins.
Davis handles the ball, but really needed to spin inside to get that shot off, and that's the kind of play that Boland would make. And Davis is more of an athlete, less of a real, truly slick lacrosse player. A catch like that requires a little inside spin, and he could have got a shot off. But it's tough right now, very tough right now for Navy.
Timeout, Johns Hopkins. Well, Jamie teased it. Now we tease you again. Kyle Wharton showing off his acting and impersonation skills. A couple of weeks ago, we gave Kyle Wharton, the senior from Pennsylvania, a flip cam and told him, show off some of your lacrosse skills. We weren't sure what we were going to get. The answer is, we got this.
My name is Chris Bull. I had over 300 points in high school. I went to Boys Latin. This is how I dodge and shoot. Hi, I'm number 9, John Grilly. This is how I shoot. This is Zach Palmer, and I'm Canadian. And this is how I shoot. They're only impressions, but I am a trained professional actor. Thank you.
Well, now, would it surprise you that Kyle Wharton is taking an acting class in his spring semester at Johns Hopkins? Now, it may surprise his professor after he watched that acting performance, but I mean, decent impersonations, especially for, you know, if you're really into lacrosse. I'm not sure if John Aston is. I'm happy that this is making it back for its 2nd straight week. This is John Aston, who played Gomez on the original Addams Family, is the professor in the dramatic acting class that Kyle Wharton is taking in the spring of his senior year. And as I mentioned last week, I was pretty impressed that Kyle even knew what the original Addams Family series was. I'm not sure if he had to look it up on the internet or Netflix or whatever to find out about the original Adams Family series, but John Aston's the professor of the class.
Well, I was impressed. I'm not qualified to say that I think he's a great actor, although he had good confidence and composure. But I was impressed with his renditions. I mean, Bolin, what does Bolin do? He bounces around, catches it, comes around, dives, scores. What does Greeley do? Greeley is a guy who's going to kind of weave in and out athletically, score goals, and then the Canadian puts his head down low, shoots high like a typical Canuck on what we would call a leaner type of a shot. And here he comes.
Yeah, and how about Kyle busting out the Dorf look when demonstrating Zach Palmer and his abilities in tight, going on the knees.
On the knees.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Zach has seen that or not. Zach is listed 5'7", but he's crafty around the cage. There's no doubt about it.
Deceptive shooter. Well, here they go in a little invert set. It means you're taking a midi behind the net. See, Navy's probably going to have to slide early. Hopkins moves it quick. They might have something, but okay. So we talked before. If you move the ball, if you can recover within 2 seconds, what do you think the offensive players need to do when they draw somebody? Answer: move it quickly. They will be recovered too quick if you do not. And that's what you saw this last time. So here we have another invert. Let's see if we can get a dodge, a slide, and a really quick decision.
Slow recovery, quick shot. Eric Rule pumps it home, 8-0 Johns Hopkins. That looked like maybe a little bit slower than a 2-second recovery off the feet.
Well, actually, there was no slide. So there was no slide, there was no recovery, but the skip pass was open, and that's what you're going to run into if you don't slide. So you can see the dodge coming hard left-handed. Nobody really comes. The skip pass is there, and sure enough, high to low, lower left-hand corner. Nice shot. So look at the two box here. This is like ESPNU technology, and we're seeing what it looks like for the goalie preparing, shooter shooting, and he puts a stick side low. Many people say never shoot the ball stick side. You know what it comes down to, Carter, is deceptive shooting. See some net, make the goalie think that you were going to shoot it to the diagonally opposite corner that you're shooting, and you will be a deceptive and an effective shooter if you're accurate.
All Blue Jays 8-0 on Navy. And over the first 23-27, Navy scoreless against Johns Hopkins. 6th longest scoreless streak of the season by Johns Hopkins. An 8-0 start for the Blue Jays. 6:33 away from halftime. We'll have a Warrior Pro session on the split dodge coming up at the half. And Jamie, as we talked about what the numbers showed you for this game, I mean, the face-offs were such a big concern, and here it is, Johns Hopkins winning another face-off, 9-0 on face-offs for Johns Hopkins. Blue Jays giving right back. But when the scoreboard is 8-0, the face-off is 9-0. That tells you it has been all Johns Hopkins from the get-go.
And there's still almost a half a quarter left in the half.
Wickham comes all the way across the midfield line. This is the Navy goalie, R.J. Wickham, all the way down into the attack zone before he finally gives it up to Jay Mann and trots back to the defensive end.
They had numbers, actually. They had two men being covered by one as Wickham was coming in, but I think they were a little shocked that he came down there and weren't able to take advantage of it the same way as if it had been a pull.
Are there any hard and fast rules about a goalie bringing it down into the attack zone? I mean, from a strategy session, I mean, it's such a rarity, but are there any?
Well, one rule is if you're the riding player, whack him in the elbows. And the other rule is break open and get open as quickly as you can for him.
Loose ball picked up by Palmer. Nice feed. It hits the pipe. Boland's shot was off the pipe with Wickham out of the cage. Well, the NFL draft this week. ESPNU delivers the college football spring draft blitz Monday through Friday, 4:30 Eastern time. Boy, how good have those John Gruden sessions been with the quarterbacks getting ready for the draft?
I love watching that guy. It's unbelievable, his terminology and lingo, and gets out there with those guys, puts them on the spot. You can really see who's got some confidence out of those quarterbacks and who's a thinker too, can't you?
You appreciate the directness, don't you? I mean, especially as a coach, right?
I do. I love when he was asking Cam Newton about the when he went for the touchdown when he was supposed to kneel on it. And he was like, I knew I smelled a rat.
I say look out for Texas A&M linebacker Vaughn Miller. I think he's going to be a terrific pro. I think a lot of other folks do too.
Where do you live?
I live in Texas, just down the road from College Station, in fact. Sometimes it's hard for me to praise the Aggies, but nice save from Pierce Bassett, the sophomore goalie from Scottsdale, Arizona. That is his first save.
The way Hopkins plays now, it is. I commented on this earlier. They push the ball, and when they lost to Princeton, they kind of paid for that because they pushed it and came up empty and turned it over and shot some bad shots. And it was at that moment that the coach could have said, you know, we're not doing this anymore. Get back to Hopkins lacrosse, slow it down, keep the games close. We're going to win it in the end with our better talent and our better defense. But they've stayed with it, and it's smart because now they were able to really put the pedal down and hammer some people.
Again, misses, backed up by Johns Hopkins. Talking to Dave Petromalo a couple of weeks ago about that exact subject of saying people have perceptions about your program and who you are from year to year, but you change from year to year. This year's team plays better in transition for Johns Hopkins, so it's not what people think of as quote-unquote slow down defensive lacrosse. This is the Johns Hopkins team that is capable getting up and down, as they had to do last week to beat Maryland. And they were down 5 goals at the half.
A little role reversal with Syracuse and Hopkins. Hopkins pushing the ball, taking some chances. Syracuse slowing the ball down and struggling to score.
This is meeting number 85 on the lacrosse field, back to 1908 between Navy from Annapolis, Maryland, and Johns Hopkins from Baltimore. Penalty flags fly. Two campuses separated by just over 30 miles.
I love watching Guida play, the freshman. He's really developed since the beginning of the year. He's got tremendous quickness and very good vision, and he's just tough.
Ground ball controlled by Hopkins. Guida picks it up and scores. And another penalty flag drops as Guida scores the goal. The goal will count 9-0 Hopkins. And more penalties coming up against the midshipmen.
So tough for Navy. They get a knockdown on the pass. Guida kind of semi-throws it away. They're whacking away at it. Next thing you know, who's in there but the Dodger, Guida. Pretty much an empty netter.
Give the assist to Boland, who was lying on the ground.
Are they giving it to him? Are they giving the flip bounce assist? I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't. I'm not saying they shouldn't. That would be a nice one to have. 9-0. Yeah, this is the time when Richie Meade is just hating life right now. There's no question about it. That him and all those guys, it's just brutal. They're better than this. They're getting hammered right now. And it is no fun to be on the end of a 9-0 first half deficit.
So there's the first slash, and then a penalty after the goal. So another extra man goal for Johns Hopkins. It is 10-0 Blue Jays, the third extra man goal of the night.
One of the things we were talking about being a great shooter is having a repertoire of shots. A repertoire of shots means that you can put the ball in different parts of the net, all of the four corners of the net, and have an opportunity to try to sell the goalie on where you're putting it that's different. So here he goes, overhand high for the upper left-hand corner. Just hammers that thing, really hip high. But last time he went high to low to the offside. You know, in the game winner, he shot last week against Maryland a low to high stinger to the upper right. He changes up his shot locations, but he's not only does he have great velocity and really solid accuracy, but he's got very good deceptive elements in his shooting. As I mentioned before, make it seem like you're shooting it to the diagonally opposite corner that you're actually shooting the ball. Make the goalie think opposite.
So the overtime game winner versus Maryland to close out that come from behind win last week in College Park for Kyle Worden. Then a pair of goals in the first half against Navy, another face-off win. Johns Hopkins has won every face-off tonight. And it's now 10-0 face-off wins for Johns Hopkins.
The only thing worse than being down 10-0 in a game would be if you were the coach that let somebody come back from being down 10-0.
Coming up on the Warrior halftime report, our Warrior Pro session on split dodges with Quint and Ned Crotty. Number 4 Syracuse versus Rutgers and Hofstra. How about the big win over UMass earlier today? It was a non-conference game for Hofstra, but the CAA, the Colonial, again, an exciting conference to watch. Johns Hopkins takes a timeout. Up 10-0, 48 seconds to go. Hofstra beating UMass in CAA play today. Jamie, let's take a look at some of the headlines from around the country in college lacrosse, beginning with Notre Dame as the #1 program in the country. Some of the weekend headlines for you here.
A big win for Maryland last night over North Carolina. Duke trounces Virginia. Brian Young, the star tackler for Maryland's mom died last week. It was a very emotional time for that team. They're going to be driving up to Long Island for the funeral on Monday. Obviously a huge win for the playoffs in the postseason seeding implications for the Terrapins, but very, very tough time for the Terrapin lacrosse family right now. Cornell clinches the Ivy League championship. There will be a tournament in 2 weeks that will be up at Cornell. Rob Pennell with a typical 2-5. I mean, he just throws up numbers that most people you just don't see.
And then that Patriot League final tonight was Bucknell leading Colgate in the 4th quarter. So we know what the polls say about the top 8, but how about, Jamie, your top 8 as we head through Easter weekend in college lacrosse?
Well, pretty close to what they were, with a couple of differences based on the competition. Notre Dame, solid #1. Johns Hopkins, #2, and clearly impacting themselves in that direction. Now Cornell 3, Syracuse 4. My former Denver Pioneers 5 with a huge win over Duke last week or 2 weeks ago. Now they beat Bellarmine this week. Duke hammering Virginia with like an 11-2 second and third quarter run. And then finally Maryland and Hofstra rounding out my top 8.
And again, Hofstra with a big win today over UMass. More on that coming up at the half. Here it's all Johns Hopkins, 10-0. Hopkins trying to take the shutout to the half.
Watch for Hopkins to go with some kind of a long dodge out towards the midfield line, probably with Rannigan, in which they're going to try to draw a slide and see if they can make something happen.
And this is rule behind the cage.
Well, so much for the long dodge. You're going invert.
Rule with the feet out high. Now it's to Ranigan, dodging at the top. Ranigan's bounce shot off the stick of Wickham rather. Backed up by Johns Hopkins, but as soon as the restart, we will head to the half. Last second substitution before the half for Johns Hopkins. Brandon Benn, he's more of an extra man specialist into the game. So again, closing seconds of the half. Hopkins already up 10-0. Quick feed, that's halftime. It's 10-0 Johns Hopkins on Navy. The 85th meeting between these two is all Blue Jays at the break. Bolin, 2 goals, 1 assist in the first half, leading a dominant first half by Johns Hopkins over Navy. Second-ranked Blue Jays rolling here in Baltimore. Now we send you back to the studio with Lowell Galindo. Halftime here at Homewood Field in Baltimore with second-ranked Johns Hopkins taking on the Navy midshipmen. Let's send it now to Quint Kesnick with this week's Warrior Pro Session.
This halftime report is presented by Warrior. All hail. And now, a Warrior Pro Session with Quint Kesnick.
Basketball has the crossover dribble. Lacrosse has the split dodge, where you change speeds and change directions to beat your man to the goal.
You want to be a superstar player? Then you have to be able to attack the goal with both hands. Blow by your defenseman using a sudden change of direction, right to left or left to right. Deception is key. Keep your eyes up and your stick up in a double threat position. Break ankles and paint corners.
We're joined by Ned Crotty, former Tewaaraton Trophy winner at Duke University, current professional attackman for Major League Lacrosse, whose split dodge is sudden and bouncy. How do you do it?
I always attack my defender with speed, run at him as fast as I can, and I try to make him take extra steps.
I want you to show me right now a couple of the key fundamentals and start with footwork. I see different guys kind of chop into it. I see other players jump into it. What do you like to do?
Personally, I don't really do either one. I like to run at my defender as fast as I can, and if I'm splitting right to left, the second I see that he's bought that I'm going to my right hand and he's taking that drop step, that's what I'm splitting back. Now he has to open his hip. So he's taken 2 steps that have done nothing for him. Now I've got him beat, where I'm either going to get a shot or I'm going to draw a slide.
So you're reading his hips and his feet?
Yes, because the second, I know where I'm going. He doesn't. So the second that I see him open his hips, he's going somewhere where I'm not. So now I come back, he's taking 1 extra step. Now he has to open his hip, 2 extra steps. At that point, remember, I'm running full speed towards the goal. He's more at a standstill. So he's taking 2 steps that haven't helped him at all. So at that point, I've got him beat.
So you've either gained separation to shoot or pass,
exactly,
or you can kind of get underneath him and get inside the defense. Last thing would be the hands. When is it safe to bring the stick, through the middle?
You never want to bring it across your face, because obviously that gives the defender a great opportunity to take it from you. What I've always done is brought the stick down. Now, if the head is out of harm's way, if it does happen to get checked, it can kind of bounce off of your chest, and from there, it's right back up. You don't really lose anything by bringing it down. All you've done is protect the ball to make sure you still have it.
Do you prefer dodging from your strong hand to your weak, or from your weak to your strong?
It all depends. If I'm going to be shooting on the run, I actually prefer to shoot with my right hand. I'm a lefty. But besides that, the game, you have to be able to play with both hands, so I wouldn't really say there's too much of a preference either way.
Starts with deception, change of speed, change of direction. Got to have the attitude. Expect success when you dodge, like Ned Crowder.
Welcome once again to Old Spice College Lacrosse on ESPNU. On a beautiful Saturday night in Baltimore, Maryland at Homewood Field, it is all Johns Hopkins. The second-ranked Blue Jays have a 10-0 lead on Navy. Halftime, a special moment for this special program, Johns Hopkins Lacrosse, the official unveiling of the Cordish Lacrosse Center. The groundbreaking will begin just off the Homewood Field, a new $10 million complex for the Johns Hopkins men's and women's lacrosse programs that will be built and be operational for next year. Carter Blackburn with Jamie Monroe, the man who led the Denver Pioneers to 4 league titles during his time as head coach there. Well, the scoreboard says it's 10-0, Jamie, and that is very indicative of how Johns Hopkins has dominated this 85th meeting with Navy from the get-go.
It's everything that Navy was hoping it wouldn't be. It's been a dominant performance at the face-off X and shooting. Obviously, the most important stat is the scoreboard, 10-0. right now it's a matter of playing for pride. Their seniors have 1/2 left of lacrosse in their career at Navy, and they're going to play as hard as they can and try to leave on the best possible note. It's unlikely they come back, but hey, that's why we're here. Let's give it a shot.
So as you would guess, looking at the first half stats, dominant numbers there for Johns Hopkins on Navy as well. The faceoffs, 10-0 in favor of the Blue Jays. And look at the shots on goal.
Yeah, I mean, it's been all Hopkins. They're playing very well. They've been very sharp. Navy has been sloppy defensively, hasn't really been able to cash in on the few chances that they've had. Possession, time of possession, dominated with the face-offs. They start the second half. They wish they'd started the first. And the face-off win.
So the first face-off win of the game begins the second half. Logan West, it's the face-off victory for Navy. And finally, the midshipmen have a chance to possess off of the face-off. It's a Navy team who's 4-8 this year, 4 straight losses, 3 one-goal losses. Dave Petramala, Johns Hopkins head coach, talking about how a year ago when Johns Hopkins went through their struggles, although relative struggles, shall we say, as the Blue Jays still at large of the NCAA tournament, but had 3 one-goal losses a season ago. For Navy this year, 1-goal loss at Loyola, just up the street from here, versus Colgate, and at Georgetown. So it has not been like this the entire season for Navy with an 8-loss season, but this is as bad as it's been for the midshipmen in 2011.
Well, a pretty good take there by Davis. The high wing dodge, this is a play that Hopkins runs almost identically. And he goes hard to his left hand, rolls back to his right, and then dips underneath. Unfortunately, ends up in the crease. But a pretty good take, one of the better takes of the game for them. They need that. He's a very good athlete. They need him to create something. Offsides on the clear from Johns Hopkins, gives Navy the ball back. Let's see if they run more plays rather than their motion offense coming out. I mean, their first offensive set, they went with a dodging play for Davis. Whereas in the first half, they were running hard and banging the ball, and that's more of it's like a running game in football. You do it to grind it out, to make them tired, and they're not going to be doing that. They're not winning the ball enough. They need to get some definite opportunities that if Hopkins slides, they get a shot.
This is Jay Mann with the first midfield line for Navy. Man out there with Andy Warner and Nick Davis. Davis trying to put the dodge on Castronovo, who hangs right there with them. So back to Mann, along with the attack line of Taylor Reynolds, Sam Jones, and Tucker Hull. Both Jones and Hull freshmen. Warner, the senior, who had the game winner in last year's overtime victory for Navy against Johns Hopkins, snapping the Blue Jays' 36-game winning streak over the midshipmen. It's been since 65 and 66 that Navy has won back-to-back games against Johns Hopkins, and the 10-0 game in the third quarter, not looking like that is going to come to an end tonight. But midshipmen playing with a pep to begin the third quarter. Warner able to corral, bounce shot just wide on one of the better looks of the night for Navy. Man shot wide, backed up by Navy. Here's Sam Jones with the first goal of the night for the midshipmen. The freshman from Annapolis, the third-generation Navy lacrosse player. Father David, grandfather Jack, both attended the Naval Academy and played lacrosse. And one of the promising freshmen for Navy, Sam Jones, has the first goal of the night.
Jones comes off a down pick And the way Hopkins is playing their picks is they are trying not to switch. I noticed it earlier, and they successfully were able to make this play. Here, no switch gives the time to get the shot off. It's tough. It's tough when you don't switch right there on the goal line. You have to be so perfectly knowledgeable that the pick is going to be there, that you're going to get out of the way.
Mentioned that Sam Jones, the third-generation Navy lacrosse player, grandfather Jack played on the 1954 National Championship team. Two-time All-American was Jack Jones. So Sam is a proud part of both the Naval Academy tradition and the Navy lacrosse tradition.
How cool is that, huh?
It's amazing, really. Really is amazing when you think of all it takes just to qualify for the Naval Academy and his success. And boy, Jamie, you talked about it. I mean, pride on the line, but if there's a place that embodies pride, it's the Naval Academy.
Well, when you bring in the pride of a Naval Academy into a father-son, grandson type of relationship, you know, that's pretty special.
And of course, on the lacrosse field, it's a 10-1 game right now with Johns Hopkins on top of Navy. A disappointing season coming to an end for the midshipmen, although a transition opportunity here for Navy. This is Hull taking it around the cage.
They needed to score right there. They had a wide open attackman in front of the net. They just were not poised enough, slick enough to make the play. That's probably their season in a nutshell. You come down and you've got wide open people. You've got to break and you pull it out, basically. They got to be able to score more goals, and they're struggling.
So this is the season finale for Navy. There's not going to be a postseason this year for the midshipmen lacrosse. Of course, Bassett makes a terrific save right in front of the cage. Now a battle for the rebound. Won by Johns Hopkins. Penalty flag coming on the hit from Kevin Doyle. Rannigan able to control, and Rannigan runs right past two Navy defenders. Shot off the pipe from Wharton. Another rebound missing just wide, and now finally the penalty will be assessed.
Look at this. Tough ground ball, gets planted, doesn't drop it. He's able to get up and fight his way out by just smashing into people. As Chris Berman would say, it was just like smashing into people.
Get ready for the combine, John Rannigan. 6'3", 205. That's getting through the line. Arm tacklers.
He is a beast. He's playing like a beast.
So Hopkins on the extra man again. Slash against Kevin Doyle. Already 3 extra man goals tonight. Push correction. Push with possession. So a 30-second extra man for Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins starts in their 1-4-1, and they'll usually cut people out and float out into a 3-3, which is a formation that gives them all their shooters in front of the net.
Palmer feeds across. The shot high from Greeley, and the sophomore in Lafayette, New York, has his 9th goal of the season. Hopkins has its first score of the second half.
That was like an instant replay of his earlier man-up goal from earlier in the night, I believe. It was a nice skip pass. Very same play that we saw before, and he does a nice job of pulling that ball to the near side pipe.
Fourth assist of the night for Zach Palmer. It's the second goal for Greeley, both on the extra man, so 10 goals this year for Greeley. Another face-off win for Matt Delente. 3rd in the nation entering tonight, and it's another goal for Kyle Wharton right off the face-off win for Delente.
It's a little bling-bling right there. Bling-bling is what we used to call our wing-to-wing shooting drill. Basically, face-off man picks it up, gets a break, throws it to a wing, and then you got the bling-bling, wing-to-wing pass. Devastating pass when you get that thing wing-to-wing like that. All the time in the world for Wharton. And here he goes. High to low. Coach Petro loving the high to low right now. much more high percentage shooting ability when you go overhand. I'm not one of those guys that's anti low to high. I like it. But if you got $1 million on the line and you got to score a goal, go high to low. You're probably going to score more often than not.
Warden has his 3rd goal of the night. And as soon as Navy gets its first score, Hopkins answers with 2 quick ones to once again take command. So you go back. I mean, the game was just 10-1 at that point. But you pointed out, Jamie, when Navy had that transition opportunity and unable to get the ball to the crease and get a shot on goal, that could have potentially changed at least the feeling of this game. Now it's right back to Johns Hopkins blowout, 11-goal advantage. 8 seconds between those last goals for Johns Hopkins. So Hopkins appearing to cruise to its 5th consecutive win, would be win number 10 of the season. Hopkins at 10-2 mark if they can close this one out against Navy. So then the question, Jamie, I mean, how close is this Johns Hopkins team to being a national championship team, national championship contender as we move towards May?
Well, I think that it's wide open. I really do. I think that Notre Dame's playing the best defense. You'd have to say Hopkins is up there playing just as well as anybody in sort of all phases. They're scoring goals. They've got slickness on attack. They've got athletes in the midfield. They're making saves. Well coached. Well, and if Notre Dame doesn't do this to people, I'll tell you that. That's the difference between Notre Dame and, I mean, if Notre Dame was playing Navy right now, they'd probably win. They might win by a few. But they're not blowing people out, and that's what sort of scares me about Notre Dame. Scares me a little bit about Syracuse, too, is, you know, when last year Syracuse loses to Army in the first round of the playoffs. Why? Well, all year long they struggled to score goals when they really needed to, and then all of a sudden people are hanging around, and anybody's in there. So you're watching Greeley shooting, rebound, ball comes around to the backside. I'm trying to see who that was, either Wharton or Palmer, I guess, with a lefty dunk in there. So it's a field day for those guys right now, and Ian Burkhart loving life right now.
Again, Ian Burkhart, the younger brother of Marshall Burkhart, tonight's honorary captain for Johns Hopkins. Navy takes a timeout. Blue Jays rolling towards 10-2. (13-1). Johns Hopkins all over Navy tonight in Baltimore, Maryland. Carter Blackburn with Jamie Monroe. Next Saturday, ESPNU goes behind the scenes with 2 of the nation's top 10 ranked lacrosse programs. All access with number 5 Denver and defending national champ Duke. It is ESPNU All Access, a part of a big day of lacrosse on ESPNU. Jamie Monroe, you can shed some light on that Denver Pioneers program.
Catch on the move. Let's go. I know. Well, you know, Eric, he put his size 93 shoes in front. By then, he can't pass it anymore.
Now's your time to step up. Let's go. We have like 48 hours to figure this out. Hold on. Green. Green. Good. Green. All right. Good job, man. Good job.
As I was saying, Jamie, you could shed some light on that Denver All Access.
Well, you know, when you think about the Cordes Center being built, it's going to, you know, Hopkins is already a dominant program, and all of a sudden they're getting world-class facilities. One of the steps in the development of the University of Denver's program when I was there was that Laura Barton gave a lead gift to get the Peter Barton Stadium built, which at the time was the first and only dedicated lacrosse facility in Division I lacrosse. An incredibly beautiful facility with locker rooms, training room, coaches' offices. It's going to be neat to see what they've done. I haven't checked out the locker room since leaving a couple years ago, and I'm looking forward to seeing that show.
For those folks who haven't been out to Denver, to the Rocky Mountain area, seeing the Pioneer program and really what that sport has become in the Denver area, how big is lacrosse at the youth and college levels now in Denver and the surrounding areas?
It's getting huge. You've got Division I schools like Denver and Air Force. You've got the Pro Outdoor and the Outlaws that are perennial contenders for a championship. You've got the Indoor Mammoth that sell out almost every single year. Every single night. And you've just got this community of lacrosse fanatics and this incredible influx of great coaching talent and young people that were pros and now living in town. And it's just amazing how much opportunity there is for kids to develop. 4 kids in high school from Denver right now going to the University of Virginia over the next 2 years. Kind of tells a lot.
And you look in goal tonight, Scottsdale, Arizona is a long way from Denver, Colorado, but Pierce Bassett, one of the nation's best goalies, starting for Johns Hopkins. Obviously the great lacrosse power and player from Arizona starting in goal. As Wickham, his counterpart in goal for the second time tonight, brings it into the attack zone, and Wickham's going to draw the flag as he puts the shot on goal. So how about Wickham, the goalie, charging all the way down for the bounce shot and drawing the flag?
Would have been a lot better if he scored. Now he has to run all the way back, 100 yards back there. It was a good effort. Showing his athleticism, obviously. It would have helped that Navy morale a little bit had he been able to score a goal here. I was talking to the SID from Navy before the game and about Wickham a little bit and about how he's been a little bit up and down. And one of his best friends died of a brain tumor this year, and it really is, I don't want to make excuses for the guy, but it's tough. It was a young woman that was just a great friend, and it's just, people go through stuff that us as normal fans, we don't know about, what's going on. Who knew about the Burkharts and what they've had to deal with? And it's tough, and getting out here on game day, you just do your best to focus and do what you got to do.
And you talked about Ryan Young and the situation, losing his mother. That's one of the Maryland's team leaders, and again, lacrosse is secondary to all of that happens in life, but it's not just rosters and statistics and players on the field.
Lacrosse, hopefully can be a little therapeutic at times and get your mind off things, but when the pressure's on to win and you're trying to do your job, it can be hard.
First extra man opportunity for Navy today. The penalty was on Marshall Burkhart. Again, on the goalie Wickham, bringing it down to the attack zone for the second time tonight. Seconds winding down on the extra man for Navy. That shot just wide from Sam Jones. Backed up, penalties released. We're back to even strength. In 2 seconds. So Johns Hopkins able to kill off the penalty. Along the lines of the bigger picture here, for these Navy seniors, this is the last game of their Navy lacrosse careers, and it's off to guys like Kevin Doyle, Michael Hirsch, and Pat McCormick. It's on to things like surface warfare, submarines, Marine Corps ground training, and service to their country as part of their commitment as graduates of the Naval Academy. This is
serious reality.
That's right, and this is the end of the season for Navy lacrosse. So that's last time for these Navy midshipmen to be on the lacrosse field altogether. A disappointing season, but it's a senior class that's accomplished a tremendous amount, not the least of which was the win over Johns Hopkins. When it's been 35 years since Navy has beaten Johns Hopkins, when you are the team to beat Johns Hopkins and snap what was a 36-game, 35-year losing streak, your place in Navy lacrosse history is going to be secured. Wickham with a nice save off the shot from Greeley.
Beautiful pass by Rannigan, too. Coach Petro was talking about the improvement in Rannigan's feeding ability, and you can see there, when he runs by you at full speed, he gets enough separation that his hands can be free, and he's got a little bit of time. His head is up, and he's sort of knifing passes through to the backside of the defense, little skip passes. Really nice look.
It was 10-0 Johns Hopkins at the half. Was the first time that Johns Hopkins has shut out an opponent for a half since Towson a year ago.
I was on that game, that Towson-Hopkins game last year. It was a big one. Towson had been playing well, and Hopkins had been playing poorly. And that was the night Kyle Wharton ripped the net with a shot. And it made, I think it might have made a SportsCenter highlight that night.
Well, Palmer's behind the back shot last week for Johns Hopkins in the win over Maryland was another of the more impressive goals you'll see. Sophomore Mitty J. Man dodges. Looked like that was a kick save from Bassett, kicking it way into the night sky. Navy able to recover. Durkin's bounce shot deflected.
That was the story of the night right there. They draw a slide. Hopkins crashes from the backside in to cover up the middle. They skip it through. They would have had a shot from 10 yards, which I think any of us would have taken as a coach. And they don't handle it.
This is Jones attacking on the restart, drawing the slide. Jones pass out high for Man, shot low. Bassett makes the save.
No stick.
His stick is behind the cage, so Bassett makes the save and then falls on it to maintain possession in a spike for good measure. Maybe somebody will go get Bassett's stick for him now. Get it yourself, Pierce.
So you see Bassett here. Is this the play? Let's see. Yeah, that's the save. Well, what ended up happening in the beginning was that it was a double team on a pick on the ball, and Bassett jumped out to play the switch. He goes behind to cover the switch, and all of a sudden his stick fell, and he's in the cage. Oh, man.
From lacrosse to handball now. Get down and make the stickless save. Pierce Bassett, well done.
That was like a catcher in like 1888, and he doesn't have a glove, and he's just got to catch it.
Well, Johns Hopkins, the number 2 ranked team in college lacrosse, headed towards the postseason. And the ESPN Family of Networks has you covered for the college lacrosse postseason. The lacrosse championship begins with the tournament selection show, May 8 on ESPNU. Then all 8 games the first round on ESPNU and ESPN2. Quarterfinal weekend, again, ESPN2 and ESPNU. The semifinals and championship, all of these events in HD. M&T Bank Stadium here in Baltimore, the Memorial Day weekend home, where Johns Hopkins is hoping to be playing right down the street. If the season ended today, these would be the automatic qualifiers, including Bucknell tonight in the Patriot League. Well, that Colonial Athletic Association, yet again, a wild year in the Colonial, determining who's going to be the champion and who might be the at-large teams out of the Colonial. UMass with a big statement. Hofstra with a big statement today with the win over UMass.
I know I had Hofstra at number 8, and here they are, not even the qualifier if the season were to end right now, with Delaware holding that position in terms of their regular season body of work. But I do think Hofstra's the best team. I think they're going to win that championship, and I think that they will have a good chance for a home game.
Johns Hopkins in commanding position to extend their record to 10-2 with 5 consecutive wins with the victory tonight over Navy. The Blue Jays looking like they have this one in command. 4 consecutive wins right now for Johns Hopkins, 3 of those over top 5 opponents. UNC, Virginia, and Maryland as a flag is thrown against Johns Hopkins, so a penalty coming on Tucker Durkin, the sophomore close defenseman. And an extra opportunity for Navy, a team that needs it. Off the pipe, ground ball scooped by the midshipman, so the penalty will be assessed against Durkin. It's 1 minute slash on Durkin. Second extra man opportunity for Navy tonight.
I like how Hopkins is looking to double team picks, and the goalie comes out to cover the slip. It really puts a defense in a position where they are using their goalie as a 7th defender, as a safety when that stuff happens near the net. Now, the double team itself wasn't as clean as I would have liked to have seen, but the idea of covering the slip there is nice.
Extra man goal for Navy. Harrison Chairs, the freshman, has his 11th goal of the season. The Navy extra man specialist and the midshipmen have their second goal of the game, both here in the third quarter. This one coming on the extra man. Second extra man opportunity for the Middies.
Well, it was a nice little pop inside. Hopkins is playing a 5-man rotating defense, which means that the middle is going to be open when all 5 men are sharing the increased responsibility inside. Maybe doing a nice job finding the middle, finishing the ball.
Well, just the third quarter score would be Johns Hopkins 3, Navy 2. But unfortunately for Navy, it was 10-0 at the half. Midshipmen do get the face-off win. Another chance here at the end of the third. And how about the third quarter shots? 12-6 Navy over Johns Hopkins. So if only the midshipmen would have been able to restart the scoreboard at the half. Man's bounce shot corralled by Jones behind the cage. Closing seconds of the third quarter. We go to the fourth. It is all Johns Hopkins on the scoreboard. Navy does get a pair of goals in the third. But Pierce Bassett and the Blue Jays a quarter away from beginning another winning streak against the Middies and getting win number 10 of the 2011 season. Well, Jamie was going for a jog along the Inner Harbor earlier today. I was at Fadley Seafood, and I think I can pronounce Fadley as my favorite crab cake that I've ever had. More importantly, the Old Spice game track shows you Johns Hopkins with a 13-2 advantage. Third quarter close, but Kyle Warden with 4 goals leading the way for the Blue Jays. And the face-off circle dominance for Johns Hopkins. It was one of the big concerns for Navy coming into tonight. Has resulted directly in game dominance, especially in the first half. Navy did not win a face-off the entire first half. Johns Hopkins 10-0 in the face-off circle, 10-0 on the scoreboard in the first half. Carter Blackburn with former Denver Pioneers head coach Jamie Monroe here at Homewood Field, where the official unveiling of the plans for the Cordish Lacrosse Center for men's and women's lacrosse, the new $10 million facility. Groundbreaking here shortly. Just off of Homewood Field. One of the things Dave Petramala talked about was at one end, the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, the other end, the Cordish Lacrosse Center, gives Homewood Field a even bigger time atmosphere.
It's always been a really neat place to watch a game.
Navy starts the fourth with a goal from Nick Davis.
Well, that was a quick hitter. They did attack in transition. They were to find Davis on the crease. Well, that's the only way they're going to come back. I mean, they're still down 10, so it's going to be tough. The only way they're going to come back is if they start scoring in bunches, winning some face-offs, getting some transition, getting a little bit lucky.
Watch how Andy Warner just kind of sneaks onto the field. Now, that's a legal substitution, but Hopkins may have lost Warner in transition there, and it's Warner who gets the assist on the goal for Nick Davis. Crafty play by Warner, the senior.
Warner showing why he's arguably one of the best, if not the best, assist man out of the midfield in the nation. And it's not uncommon for guys to slip in and off the field. I mean, they're getting a defenseman off right there. That's where the midfielder comes on. He comes on right on sides, right in front of the box. I don't think it was sort of a crafty play as much as it was just happened to be the timing of his coming on the field that made it seem so.
Warner's going to close his career with a point in 24 consecutive games, including that dramatic game winner in overtime last year. So the senior from Corning, New York's East High School, younger brother Ryan is a middie on the Navy lacrosse team. So Ryan Warner will continue on with that Navy lacrosse family tradition. Talked earlier about how Sam Jones and his third generation Navy lacrosse, stretching all the way back to the championship team from 1954. So since halftime, Jamie, this is a 3-3 lacrosse game. In fact, 3 straight goals by Navy.
Well, they're going to need a lot more than that to make this thing a game.
I said 3 straight. That's even wrong. Back-to-back goals by Navy.
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah, that was.
So they're in their double invert offense right now, which means 2 middies go behind the net, covered by short sticks. Hopkins is in a specialty defense where they're going to have a designated slider and their other 3 players zoning it up. The double invert was in vogue in the mid-90s. Brown University used to run it all the time. And you don't see it as much as you see what you most normally see as a single invert, where 1 midi brings a short stick behind the net.
NFL Draft this week. ESPNU delivers the College Football Spring Blitz Draft Special, Monday through Friday, 4:30 Eastern Time on ESPNU. Getting you ready for the NFL Draft. Bounce shot somehow sneaks in. Bassett tried to kick it away, but Taylor Reynolds sneaks on the 4th Navy goal. Now it's 3 straight goals by Navy.
There you go. And it was a good possession. They went from their double invert into the single invert, and they just kept putting pressure on, and they were dodging in such a way that it made it hard for Hopkins to slide. Hopkins, it's easy to slide if they see you beating somebody with speed. They're coming. But when they don't really come that hard, when they're just kind of rolling around in there, it's hard to know. They feed it in, and it was pretty much about a perfect shot. Watch him throw back and somehow release that thing 5-hole, near side pipe. Pretty special little shot right there.
Reynolds, a junior, coming back on that attack line next year. The entire attack line will be intact with Reynolds, Sam Jones, a freshman, and Tucker Hull, the freshman. So Navy likely going to close this year 4-9 with 5 consecutive losses, and this will be the end of the 2011 season for Navy. But there's reason for optimism with a class that comes back for Navy. I mean, off your attack line at first midfield, only Andy Warner graduates. Michael Hirsch, senior close defenseman. R.J. Wickham, a junior, so he'll be back in cage next year for Navy. And what Richie Meade hopes is a quick rebuilding program. Remember, it's just 2004 that this Navy team was in the national title game against Syracuse.
1 goal away from winning that thing, too, if it weren't for Mikey Powell putting on a show in that game and proving himself to be the best player of his tenure in college lacrosse. They might have just won.
Greeley's pass just wide for Boland.
It's one of Greeley's biggest strengths is that the kid puts his head up. He really feeds it well. We were talking about Brannigan having made some improvements there. Greeley really sees skip passes and lanes very well and just knifes the ball through.
Burnham clears it with a long pole. Well, with that NFL draft coming up next weekend, college football spring blitz draft special. It's going to happen Monday through Friday on ESPNU, 4:30 Eastern time. Again, it's the college football spring blitz draft special, Monday through Friday, ESPNU, 4:30 Eastern. The college football spring blitz draft special, Monday through Friday. There's Mel Kiper Jr.'s big board right now. All right, Jamie, I'll put you on the spot. You got the #1 pick. Who were you taking? Now, noticeably absent from Mel Kiper's big board would be Cam Newton.
I'm going with the Auburn defensive tackle there.
Nick
that kid is just absolutely a beast, and everybody needs one of those. I live in Bronco land, although I am a Pats fan. So let's see, what are the Pats going to take? I think they got 6 picks in the first, 30 picks of the draft or something ridiculous like that.
Well, like I said, Von Miller, whoever ends up with him, I think is going to have a fine NFL linebacker. That's my prediction, Jamie.
If there's football.
Yes, when there's football. You just announced a role as an assistant coach in the MLL, am I correct?
That is correct. Coach Day at the Boston Cannons is going to let me help out as a volunteer assistant for the Boston Cannons and try to help out with some scouting and some video and some both self-scout and scouting opponents down the line. And obviously I live in Denver, they're in Boston, but I'm going to get back there whenever I can. I mean, they've been so close to winning a championship, and it would just be really neat to get into the pro ranks a little bit.
Mark Goodrich, bounce shot just wide of the cage, backed up by Hopkins with 9:14 to go here in the 4th.
You know, one of the things, the difference between Hopkins and many other programs, Mark Goodrich, that kid was one of the top recruits in the country when he was a senior. He's been plagued by injury, and here he is on the second midfield line. And when that kid gets rolling, which he will, and he's already starting to, but as May rolls around, you watch that kid have big-time implications in plays on how Hopkins does in the NCAA tournament. When you have veterans like that, it's really a luxury that Navy doesn't have right now.
'85th meeting between Johns Hopkins and Navy has been Blue Jays from the start. 13-4 advantage for Dave Petramala's second-ranked Johns Hopkins team. Well, we mentioned earlier about Navy. This is the end of the Navy season, and every time this year you look at what these seniors have ahead of them. These are the future assignments for the Navy graduating seniors, and you're reminded once again that these aren't just young men, lacrosse player and student athletes, but these are the future military leaders of the United States Navy, and we wish them all of the success and safety as they move on in their naval assignments after graduation from the United States Naval Academy. On the field, it was a 10-0 lead for Johns Hopkins at the half, meaning that Navy has actually outscored the Blue Jays in this second half. And with just a few exceptions, it hasn't been backups out there for Johns Hopkins. It's mostly been first and second midfield. Now the roster starting to stretch a little bit for Johns Hopkins. Blue Jays on the verge of win number 10 for the season. They're going for their 5th consecutive win. Little payback from last year's overtime win for Navy over Johns Hopkins. It was the first time in 35 years, first time in 37 meetings that Navy had defeated Johns Hopkins. And from the get-go, this was all Blue Jays. Carter Blackburn with former Denver Pioneers head coach Jamie Monroe. Second-ranked Blue Jays, 7:46 away from tallying another win against their neighbors from Annapolis.
Their coaching staff just wants them to stay sharp. They want to get some other guys in the game, but still play smart, play sharp. Hopefully get out of here with no injuries. Kill this last 7:30 left in this game.
The 85th meeting between two of the all-time winningest Division I men's lacrosse programs. Johns Hopkins number 1 on that list, Navy number 3, Syracuse in the middle. Again, history-wise, it's been Johns Hopkins dominating this rivalry. Tucker Hull sends that shot wide, but he's another of those talented freshmen for the Navy midshipmen. The rebuilding of this program going to be around guys like Tucker Hull, the freshman from Charlotte, North Carolina.
For a while there, Navy was, you know, a power. I mean, not quite ACC level, but right there. The kind of where Cornell has been over the last 4 or 5 years, Navy was. And they fell off a little bit. Army's actually picked up the slack. Coach Albarisi at Army has just done a phenomenal job. And they've got the talent now. It'll be interesting to see what Navy's future holds. That they are young, which is good for them for the future. But I don't see major explosiveness out of them, though, even though they're young. Those kids are good players, and they're great scorers, and it's impressive to score 70 or 80 points as a combo as freshmen. But they're not known as Dodgers, and they're going to need to be. That's the difference between the Army team and the Navy team right now, is Army's got attackmen that can go to the rack, and they will be a threat in the Division I lacrosse tournament in a couple of weeks.
This is Mike Madick, senior midi, setting things up for Johns Hopkins as now the Blue Jays go deeper into the midfield lines. Madick out there with Greg Edmonds as well. Ground ball scooped by Navy. Brian Striffler, one of those seniors for the Navy midshipmen, able to get the ground ball and bring it into the attack zone. Warner's feet in front, deflected. Harrison Chairs couldn't corral it. Bassett behind the cage with 2 midshipmen riding hard. Johns Hopkins able to clear it out of there. Bassett gets away from the double. Madick again setting up the offense. Hunter Rogers now running attack for Johns Hopkins as well. James Mulm, the freshman from Alexandria, Virginia, checks in, as does Trevor Brown. Wickham goes high to save it off the shot from Madick. Senior from Seton Hall Prep.
As I'm looking down the roster at all the kids that are starting to get PT for the Blue Jays here at the end of this game, they were all who's who of recruiting a few years back. Number 14, Hunter Rogers, he's another Arizona kid that came out and sort of, you know, he and Bassett were the two, you know, first really pretty big-time guys to come out of Arizona and be able to go to a nationally ranked, you know, big-time program. But every one of these guys, every single one of them, I remember when I was recruiting, I was like, oh, man, I love that kid. I love that kid.
Flag coming. Count the goal. Sean Den, the senior from Kessington, Maryland, gets the goal for Navy to make it 13-5 with 3:21. And a senior has a goal to go out on, his first goal for Den.
No help here. Madick ends up getting blown by, and the defenseman's got his back to the ball. He needs to go. He needs to be ready to go. Let's look at this again. It's okay, you know, it wasn't good enough defense by Natick for sure, but they needed to get more help in there on that slide. Natick needed to play it a little better, but they needed to have somebody go, and their first group did it perfectly all night long. Now here with the second groups, this is what you're going to see, a little bit more, less coordination. Very good players, but they don't get the PT. They don't have the reps.
So how about that moment for Sean Den? Richie Meade gets his seniors in there knowing that this is their last chance, and Sean Den, with about 3.5 minutes remaining in his college lacrosse career, gets his first goal. And a good moment for Sean Den and Navy, and otherwise disappointing season for the midshipmen. Well, Kyle Wharton, the senior for Johns Hopkins, this is the guy that Dave Petromala says, we'd love to get him going, get our offense taken to another level, and he did tonight.
Look at the way he releases the ball. Perfect wind up, perfect balance. He can come around and finish it, sets his feet, changes up his location of where he's shooting it. The Hopkins attack overall has had a heck of a night. Look at that, 7 goals and 7 assists. Phenomenal night, 5 assists for Palmer tonight. As you can see, it's a career high. Those box players from Canada, they have a tendency to be very underrated passers and feeders. They're kind of known for being goal scorers, but that game teaches you how to see an open stick as opposed to an open man, and they just throw the ball right in there.
Because there's such less space in the box game?
Exactly right, and so they're not, you know, their definition of open is very different from the definition that most kids grow up with, and because of that, they throw the ball in there and kids get used to catching it.
Well, the goal counts for Sean Den, plus penalty assessed. 1-minute penalty goes against Marshall Burkhardt. Second time that he's been penalized tonight for Johns Hopkins. And another extra man opportunity for Navy. I mean, you see Dave Petromala shaking his head, and Jamie, you just know as a coach, you're up 10-0 at the half, game in command, and yet there are going to be teaching moments out of this game, even though it's going to look like a blowout win, and everyone will be patting the Johns Hopkins players on the back. Dave Petromala is going to come out of here with some film.
No question, and the film never lies, and Coach will watch it probably about 10 times between now and Monday, and when they have that new small film room, they're going to have those kids in there.
That shot deflected.
Uh-oh.
Oh, big hit. Big hit from Andy Warner. Flag thrown on the other side of the field, and now Dave Petromala is walking out there to check on Tucker Durkin, the defender who took that shot from Warner.
That was a buddy pass. Unfortunate pass. He really set his man up to get popped.
So it's called a legal body check. That's the penalty against Andy Warner. And as you said just a couple of minutes ago, Jamie, I mean, in a game that's decided, you just root for good health for everybody out there. And therefore happy to see Durkin get back on his feet and head back towards the Johns Hopkins bench.
Maybe he just had the wind knocked out of him a little bit. Definitely a scary moment. Coach Petra needs to get his starters out of there right now, because the last thing you want to do, 2 minutes left in the ball game, lose somebody important.
And sure enough, Stephen Burke is going to check into goal right now with 2:38 to go. So Pierce Bassett is done, and he'll give way in goal for Stephen Burke, the junior from the Bullis School in Potomac, Maryland. Bassett gets a nice hand from the Johns Hopkins fans. And an extra man opportunity coming for Johns Hopkins with just over 2.5 to go.
Don't be surprised if they just kill this game. Terminology of kill the game means waste that clock all the way down. There's going to be a keep it in call here in 23 seconds, in which they're going to have to keep it in the box. Maybe they'll try to score.
Logan West.
But why not kill it? But I'll tell you why not kill it, because you got some guys that want to score goals out here that haven't got to play too much, so we'll see.
Winner with the feet inside, bounce shot from Will McCann, a junior from the Woodlands, Texas, in the Houston, Texas area. Midshipmen get the takeaway. Well, no matter what happens in the next minute 30, this is going to be the end of Navy's season. The Midshipmen are going to finish the year 4-9 with 5 straight losses. And as we talked about throughout the night, as Wickham loses his stick, Hopkins gets it back. Open net shot just missed by Greg Edmonds. Back to even strength. Penalty flag thrown against Navy as Johns Hopkins scores again. Greg Edmonds, the freshman from Ellicott City, Maryland, pumps home the goal for the Blue Jays to make it 14-5 in the last minute of the fourth quarter. First career goal for Greg Edmonds.
Strong move. Edmond catches the ball, a little topside dodge. Defenseman goes over his head. Risky play. You can see why it's risky, because if you miss that check, they're walking in. But what are you going to do? It was 13-5 anyways. I take it there's some rivalries that you take the pedal off a little bit. Some rivalries you don't. And this is maybe one of those that you don't.
Another flag down substitution penalty. Looks like it's coming if it's assessed, and it will be. Offsides against Navy.
27 blue offside, 30 seconds. 27 blue.
Now semantics now with 20 seconds left in this game. No matter what the final score is, it's going to be Johns Hopkins going to 10-2 on the season. 5th consecutive win for the Blue Jays. And after last year, Navy snapped the 36-game losing streak to Johns Hopkins with an overtime win. Blue Jays once again over Navy, this time dominating fashion from the get-go. Final score is 14-5. Second-ranked Johns Hopkins over Navy. All-around solid performance by Johns Hopkins. What was the most impressive part of the night, do you think, for the Blue Jays, Jamie?
Overall, they did well from beginning to end, really. I mean, they came out and scored immediately. They faced off incredibly well. They shot the ball well. They banged the ball. They assisted. They got goal scoring from attack, from middies. Their defense was very well coordinated with slides and recovering. And when Navy finally would get through, Bassett had some tremendous saves, kick saves, in tight. I mean, he didn't have a lot of saves, but he had some big ones. I don't think Navy really threatened that much, but overall, it was a very, very good team effort, a smart effort. And I'll tell you the other thing about the Blue Jays is they play hard as heck. They really do. They play hard.
Now the Blue Jays win this one 14-5 coming up next weekend. Old Spice College Lacrosse on ESPNU. 7 o'clock. It's #1 Notre Dame versus 4th-ranked Syracuse from the Carrier Dome. And the Sector Spiders Lacrosse season update show and a pair of ESPNU All-Access programs taking you inside Denver Pioneer Lacrosse and Duke Blue Devil Lacrosse. That is coming up next weekend. Well, Ian Burkhart, the honorary captain with older brother Marshall, pushing him right into the huddle to celebrate with the rest of the Blue Jays. A 10-win season, 14-5, the victory tonight over Navy. Coming up next, we'll send you to Sports Center U, studio with Lowell Galindo and Mark Dixon. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For Jamie Monroe, I'm Carter Blackburn. Johns Hopkins wins it big time over Navy tonight at Homewood Field in Baltimore.